You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
All right, and welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and joined as always by your co-host, Alex. Alex, how we doing tonight?
Not so bad, man. It's middle of July. It's hot. It's getting hot down here. But we're trucking right along. The All-Star game was tonight, I guess. I haven't really watched any baseball this year, if I'm being completely honest. The Rockies have been terrible. I'm not in a great baseball market. I don't have cable, so I'm not watching it. Not that cable matters. All of these teams have their own streaming services now anyways. Right. But it's middle of July. Like, we're just plugging away. We've got a big life event coming up, so that's kind of taken a lot of my attention. So we're just counting down.
There you go. With baseball, right? Like, I think baseball told on itself very, very heavily over the last day or so, when they were talking about, Pat McAfee doing the introductions and all of this and all of that, and the I don't know how else to describe it, but curmudgeon-y type of responses that were had with that. And I guess heaven forbid somebody come out with some energy and some try and bring a little bit of excitement to that, instead of the kind of the old ho-hum thing. Like, that very well could be part of the reason that baseball has a hard time attracting viewers, is because it's hey, we're going to put this thing on. It's going to take you at least 3 to 4 hours to watch it, and you can fall asleep during the middle of it, take a good hour and a half long nap, and wake up and you won't even notice that anything happened.
It's a NASCAR race is what it is. Apparently,
but with far less crashes. At least with NASCAR, you have the like, oh, that's a big crash and something's on fire. Like, there's at least the possibility of that.
Yeah. It looks like this has been kind of a pretty good game, given the fact it is now in the top of the 10th, tied as the American League All-Stars rallied, scoring 6 runs in the 7th inning and 9th inning combined to force extras. So good times. I still don't care. Could not. Like, do they still do the winner of this gets home field advantage in the World Series? Is that a thing? I genuinely have no idea.
Couldn't tell you.
I genuinely have no idea. I'm just waiting for the next F1 race, and obviously football is on its way.
Right. This is draft preparedness season. Is what this is looking like for me. So let's get ready for all the drafting and all of that to come here shortly. And hey, guess what we're going to do tonight? We're going to talk about some more guys that maybe you should look at drafting. So I think that's what they call in your biz the tease.
That's a good one. Yeah, it's a good tease.
There we go. So, but yeah, before we get into that, any news, notes, anything like that you want to hit up?
Yeah, actually, like, I haven't really seen. It's been kind of a quiet week for the NFL. They've kind of taken a few things back. I mean, there's been some signings that have happened, but it hasn't really been all that exciting. So there hasn't really been anything that has caught my attention in the NFL. How about for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's the signings is about it, right? Like, you had the Jets going out and signing 2 of their former first round picks, with Sauce Gardner becoming now the highest paid cornerback in NFL history, effectively ousted Derek Stingley Jr. as the highest paid cornerback in NFL history. He got a hold on to that title for all of like 3 months. So not even. But and then they also went out and signed Garrett Wilson to an extension there as well. Trey Smith signing with the Chiefs. Like, that's really kind of all I've seen is some signings on this, and and some rumblings of guys that want signings, and so we were still hearing grumblings and rumblings out of Washington with Terry McLaurin wanting a new deal, and not much happening on that front there. So it'll be interesting to see how some of the stuff starts playing in there, and this is one of those that these types of things can certainly start affecting where I'm viewing guys when it comes to draft capital, because if a guy's going into the training camp and having grumblings going into training camp and not being a happy camper about that, there is a good chance that I may not I may look at moving them down my drafting roster or my drafting board there, just from the standpoint, typically guys that are dealing with that kind of teams, organizations, and players that are dealing with some of that kind of distractions tend not to have very good fantasy seasons the following year, right? Like they come in, they go, you know what, I'm going to pay on the deal as it is, and you're going to have to pay me next year to keep me, versus the ones that keep going into that and get further into that, and it's still a contentious point heading into the season.
One of the guys we're going to talk about tonight, that you said that and it kind of triggered something in my brain. One of the guys we talked about tonight is in a trade me or sign me situation, and that's going to have an impact on how he is viewed. Certainly, how we're viewing him here in the middle of July, because as we talk about him tonight, he has not been signed or traded, and a disgruntled player is not generally one that is a fruitful player. So we'll get to him when we get to player number 35 or wide receiver 35 here tonight.
Next week.
Oh, sorry, you're right. Because we'll talk about him next week. Maybe that'll be something that happens. I got my numbers mixed up, and I have an update on the All-Star game.
Somebody won.
They're going to a swing off, I guess. So
Okay.
That's kind of cool. I don't know what they're doing, but the ESPN alert says there's a swing off.
So it feels almost like hockey, where we're just going to a shootout.
Just go to a shootout. Yeah, see what happens.
Right, like we've decided we're not going to keep going back and forth, and the players are probably going, well, we're not getting paid enough to play free baseball on top of the exhibition game in the middle of this. No, thank you.
Don't actually care. Yeah.
Right. Can we just pack it up and head home? But
yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, 54 games. I still stand by that.
That's what it is.
So, alrighty. Anyway, I feel like I've bagged on baseball enough. Let's. Any other thoughts before we start jumping into these wide receivers?
No, let's talk about them.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to tonight. We are talking wide receivers, right? We've hit up quarterbacks, we've hit up tight ends, we've hit up running backs, and now we're over into the wide receivers, and we're going to be jumping into the wide receivers. These are the late round sleeper type of guys that maybe talking about here tonight, where wide receivers 41 through 60 is where they're kind of currently sitting at the ADP, and where we're going to be looking at. So we're going to go ahead and hop in and talk about Marquise Hollywood Brown. And last year, Marquise Brown, 9 receptions on 15 targets, 91 receiving yards, 0 touchdowns. Thoughts on Hollywood Brown?
So didn't play all but 2 games. Was in the playoffs for the Chiefs. And when he played those 2 games, they were late in the season. It was him trying to come back from an SC joint injury. And so he saw the ball come his way, right? It didn't amount to a ton of yardage. It didn't amount to any touchdowns. And he finished those 2 weeks as wide receiver 55 and wide receiver 53. So we have to assume he'll be healthy this year, right? Like that's why he's rated where he's rated, because you assume that he'll be healthy. But honestly, like this Chiefs roster, it's so hard to figure out who is going to get the ball from Patrick Mahomes in any given week. They're going to have to still make sure that Travis Kelce gets his. Still make sure that this running back room, which is all of a sudden pretty crowded, right, with some talent, gets theirs. You still have some really good talent in that wide receiver room too, and some established veterans and some flyers. And so Hollywood Brown is kind of like the last man in, right? Like that's kind of what this feels like. And while you want a piece of this Chiefs offense, because I think they're going to be good again, this isn't really the piece of the Chiefs offense that I'm really looking for, because I don't think I'm going to get much of anything out of him in redraft. Is he worth a flyer in a best ball? Sure, but not at I mean, at wide receiver 40, he's coming off the board at 145, which is the 12th, 13th, 14th round, right? Somewhere in that area. Yeah, at that point, you're doing dart throws anyways in a best ball. So sure, it's probably worth it. But in a redraft, I'm not going anywhere near Hollywood Brown until he proves it to me. And hopefully I'm not too late to it, but he's got to prove it to me first.
Right, and there's certainly something to that. You know, he did miss quite a bit of time last season with that injury. When he did come back, we saw him get some pretty good looks and some pretty good target share for those couple of games. But then throughout the playoffs, didn't really amount to a ton of work there, and saw only about a 15% target share. So I don't know that that's going to necessarily lead up to great production. This is and all of that time that he was there, right? Rashee Rice was not in the picture with that injury. So I don't know that we're going to necessarily see much change on that one. This is a guy that, again, you mentioned it as a best ball. You kind of like that dart throw, because I do think you'll have one or two blow up games, right? He still has a deep play threat, deep play ability, and it'll be interesting to see how the Chiefs line that up with him and Worthy, and see what they can do on trying to take the top off the defense a little bit and really kind of space the field and spread it out there. But this is one of those that in a redraft setting, I will probably not have many rosters that have Marquise Hollywood Brown on it. Any other thoughts on Hollywood Brown? All right, let's go ahead and head on over to the next guy on the list, and that is Rashad Bateman. And Rashad Bateman last year, 45 receptions, 72 targets, 756 yards, 9 touchdowns. Thoughts on Rashad Bateman?
Yeah, so this guy, I mean, it's tough to make sense of what he's going to be in this Baltimore offense again this year, because the 9 touchdowns is really good. Was good as a boom potential, right? Like he had boom potential. There are days where he was, averaging his catch was 25 yards, that he was averaging per catch. But the problem is there was, 1 or 2 of those per game where he was averaging 25 yards. It's not a ton of volume going to Rashad Bateman. So, well, at the end of the year, it looked okay. It just, like, week to week, it wasn't all that consistent is probably the word I'm looking for. So again, we're talking about these guys down here in the wide receiver 39, 40, or excuse me, wide receiver 60, 59 range. Like, these are all dart throws that are great best ball candidates. But I think on a week to week basis, you want something that's a little bit more consistent and not having to play the will he or won't he go off this week. So again, with Rashad Bateman, I think that's kind of the same thing. Like it has great boom potential, but man, the bust potential is just as high. And if he can't replicate 9 touchdowns, which he got 4 of those, almost half of those touchdowns in the playoffs, it probably helped you out. But like, honestly, if you were still riding him as you got into the playoffs, you probably weren't playing for much, right? Like, he's not a guy that you're looking to be your wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2. He's a nice complementary piece, but realistically, he's a dart throw and a great best ball candidate.
Right. And I think he'll certainly have one or two of those games that I think he will blow up. So certainly worth a look in the best ball. However, for redraft, I do have to agree with you that I won't have much Rashad Bateman on any of my rosters. And while yes, he did have 9 touchdowns last year, I do think we see him regress a little bit there. But the 9 touchdown was a bit of an anomaly to begin with, right? Because he had only 8 red zone targets. So this isn't a guy that they're looking for once they start getting down into the red zone and start looking to try and punch the ball in, right? Like he is not a guy that comes to front of mind for that offense and how they're looking to do that. So, yeah, I do think we see some regression there. Yeah, this is a guy that really, probably only going to see 4, maybe 5 targets averaged out over the course of a week over the course of the season. So the depth, the volume certainly isn't there. And this is a guy that I think may actually see some see a downtick in the receiving work there as well, right? Because they did also add DeAndre Hopkins into the mix in Baltimore as well. So it's not going to surprise me if we look up at the end of the season, Rashad Bateman is the 4th or 5th most targeted guy on this offense, behind Zay Flowers, behind Mark Andrews, behind DeAndre Hopkins. Like I think Rashad Bateman, for a best case scenario, is looking 4th on the looking for the 4th most targets on this team. And at that point, I'd rather take my shots on other people. This is a guy that, in a deeper league, sure, as a 6th wide receiver, that's where I'd be looking to try and make that move there, but not a guy that I'm looking to go out and really put on a redraft league in most more standardized formats in that. Any other thoughts on Rashad Bateman?
No, sir.
All righty, let's go ahead and take a look at Christian Kirk. And Christian Kirk last year, 27 receptions, 47 targets, 379 yards, 1 touchdown. Thoughts on Christian Kirk?
He did that in 8 games. Saw his season cut short with, collarbone, I think. Collarbone and calf issues. It was a rough year for Christian Kirk in Houston. And there was high expectations, I think, from everybody in that Houston offense last year. So I think there's a lot of disappointment. Now, I know that the last 2 guys that we talked about, I said, oh, these are dart throws and best ball candidates. If Christian Kirk is healthy, he's the 2nd wide receiver in that offense in Houston. And on top of that, he could be the slot for CJ Stroud, right? And that makes him, the volume get there a little bit more, especially if CJ Stroud is just looking to build some confidence backups early on, right? To just build some confidence back up and remember how to play quarterback in this league. So a sure-handed slot receiver is a great way for a quarterback to get into the rhythm of a game, and that they're going to target him a little bit more, especially if tight ends and slot receivers kind of fulfill that same role for a quarterback and being that security blanket. So I actually like where Christian Kirk is going here, and I don't mind putting him on a redraft and waiting on him, right? Like I don't mind waiting on him and getting what I think is really good value for a guy that I don't think is going to finish wide receiver 58. If he plays the whole season, there's no conceivable way that Christian Kirk finishes wide receiver 58. So to me, there's nothing but value built in here. I don't know that I need to wait until the 135th overall pick. I might go snag him a little bit before that just to make sure I have him, but you don't have to with where he's being ranked. And if you're playing against a bunch of people who are just going off of best available, you don't have to worry about, you can stash him away and then, in the 12th round or whatever, go ahead and grab him because he's going to come up. He's going to start being on people's radars, and you can get ahead of that.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Like we've had two kind of back-to-back injury shortened seasons that certainly have left a little bit of a taste in people's mouths over the last couple of seasons here, right? But this is a guy that quite frankly still is electric when he's out there and can still really do some good things when he's on the field. I do think that that you're right. This is, he's going to be the wide receiver 2 in Houston, potentially wide receiver 3, just depending upon how camp plays out. But this is a guy that I think will ultimately fit in and play a ton of snaps out of the slot. And I think that that's going to do very good things and very big things for him. And this is a guy that, right, you're able to pick him up as your 5th wide receiver on your roster, but he does have top 24 upside when it's all said and done. So I do really like this value here, and I do think that this is a guy that people are doing a little bit of snoozing on, a little bit of sleeping on. Any other thoughts on Christian Kirk?
This guy, I mean, again, if he plays the whole year, no conceivable way he finishes this low.
Fair enough. Alrighty, let's go ahead and head on over and look at Luther Burden the third, and Luther Burden, the rookie, coming into the Bears. Thoughts on Luther Burden?
So, I head scratcher where the Bears took a wide receiver there in the second round, and Luther Burden with what they have in terms of pass catchers already in this offense, including, a decent pass catching running back. So I'm not entirely sold on where Luther Burden fits into the Chicago offense. You've still got, Rome Odunze, you've got DJ Moore, you've got Cole Kmet, right? And Colston Loveland, who they drafted in the first round as a pass catching, as an option there at tight end, right? So I'm confused as to how much Luther Burden sees the field, and when he does see the field, how much he sees the football, because it's still a developing offense there in Chicago with a young quarterback trying to take strides in his sophomore season. I guess I hope I'm wrong about him, but I'm out on Luther Burden this year, unless it's in a best ball format where he might have, the one pop week. I don't see it over the course of, the 13 or 14 weeks that we need consistency to be successful. I don't see how he contributes.
Right. And this is one of those two that he is still, he's dealing with a soft tissue injury as well, right? Like, and this is the time of year to really start paying attention to some of those softer tissue injuries and what that looks like, and really keep an eye on that as you're heading into your draft. But I'm right there with you, right? Like, this doesn't make much sense to me, kind of one, why the Bears would take him where they did, right? When you have DJ Moore on the roster, you have Rome Odunze that you drafted in the first round last year. You went out and took a tight end in the first round this year. You already had a pretty good pass catching tight end on the roster, and DeAndre Swift is a pretty good pass catching running back. So, like, all of those points you made, I 100% agree with. And this is a guy that, when he was at Missouri, he certainly did lots of really good things, but a lot of that was because Missouri, they found a way to put the ball in his hands and really manufactured a ton of touches for him in that offense. This is a deal where I have a hard time believing that they're going to be manufacturing a bunch of touches for the guy that's going to slot in as their third wide receiver on the depth chart, most likely. And will, when the season's all said and done, is probably going to be fighting for 4th on the roster for most targets. Like, that's there's a lot of things that I think can happen here. But I'm not putting a lot of faith in Luther Burden to really outperform this ADP. And I feel like you're probably getting about what you'll get on this one. I think the ceiling for him is probably 50 receptions and 600 yards, 3-4 touchdowns, like, which is, there's still some value for that on where he's being drafted, but it's not one that I want to have to deal with week in, week out, trying to figure that one out. Any other thoughts on Luther Burden? Okay, let's go ahead and head on over and talk about Marvin Mims. And Marvin Mims last year, 39 receptions, 52 targets, 503 yards, 6 touchdowns, 13 rushing attempts for 42 yards. Thoughts on Marvin Mims?
So those 6 touchdowns are from week 11 through week 18. So realistically, it's 4 touchdowns, because if you're playing a week 18 fantasy football, get out of my face. I don't want to talk to you. So you're talking about four touchdowns for him, and it was really successful there in the stretch. So he if you had him on your roster, he likely helped you be very successful in the playoffs. The problem was you had to get through the first 10 weeks, and I don't think you kept him on the roster with those first 10 weeks, because he was pitiful. I mean, he was downright terrible. And not even worth a roster spot. So I don't know what Marvin Mims do we see? Do we see week, first half of the season Marvin Mims, or second half of the season Marvin Mims? And do we see, Marvin Mims even get to play very much? There's reports out there that he might not win that, wide receiver 2 role, or starting wide receiver role there in Denver. So this is a buyer beware. This is one I would tell you to please, read into what you're seeing before you're making this draft pick, because I do think that, man, the likelihood that you get burned, and I know it's hard to say, I'm going to get burned when I'm drafting, wide receiver 56 with, in the 12th or 13th or 14th round here. Like, that's hard to say you get burned, but you might get burned. I think you have to be careful with Marvin Mims, because it's boom bust, and it was boom the back half of the season, but the first half of the season was just awful.
Yeah, and with Marvin Mims, right? Like, he is a very boom bust guy, right? And that was even the case with him back in college, right? He was a down the field threat. There's been several times throughout his career, like, he's absolutely gone off and popped, because he is a guy that you can hit. If you can hit him in stride 15 yards down the field, like, he makes the guy miss and he's gone, right? Like, he is electric. But the problem is that Denver just seems to have this weird thing about really kind of utilizing him, right? Like, there's times that we come out, we see him have some absolutely fantastic games and some really electric plays, and then he goes on a disappearing act for a couple of weeks, and really, we haven't seen him be in the, getting the snap share, getting the target share, lower on the routes run. Like, there's lots of interesting things to that as to, why when we see some of these big kind of blow up weeks, that we then have seen him fade a little bit in other weeks there, and it looks like they almost aren't building him into the scheme on that one. So this is one that I do think you're right. It'll be interesting to see how this looks and works, right? Like, does he actually slot in as the wide receiver number 2 next to Cortland Sutton, or is this a guy that we're going to be seeing more as the slot guy, and Pat Bryant, or another one of these Denver wide receivers come in and really take over that wide receiver 2 role? So I'm going to keep a very close eye on this one going through training camp, and really, keeping an eye on the beat reporters on this one. Because again, some of that production last year came off the back half, and it was even a little bit deceptive. But this is one of those, as much as I want to say like that, I do think Marvin Mims can absolutely return some value here, but it's going to come in a very streaky form, and I think that you're gonna really have a not very fun time trying to figure out exactly which weeks are going to be the boom weeks and which ones won't be. But perfect best ball candidate. And this is a guy that I really like in those best ball formats, where I'm not having to try and guess the week. And if it happens and he blows up and puts up a top 10 weekly finish, great, I get those points and move on, but I'm not having to deal with the weeks where he gets goosed and or we see one target type of thing. So this is one of those that's a little bit of a proceed with caution. I would agree with you on that one. Any other thoughts on Marvin Mims?
No, sir.
All right, let's go ahead and head over and talk about Trey Harris. And Trey Harris last year was he was in college, right? He's a rookie. So coming into to his rookie season with the Chargers, and looks like he may be doing a little bit of holding out here going into training camp. Thoughts on Trey Harris?
Yeah, first off, that's got to get sorted, right? Like, don't draft a guy who's not playing. That's or is not signed, and you can't play if you're not signed. So that's the big thing. Again, tough to see how this team, where his usage comes in, right? This team signs Najee Harris. They drafted Omari and Hampton, right? That seems like there is a emphasis on running the football. We know that Jim Harbaugh loves to run the football, right? So that feels like there's an emphasis there. On top of that, though, you've already got Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, and Mike Williams in this in this wide receiver room. So Trey Harris is fourth man in there. And yes, Mike Williams maybe not, totally healthy, but he's going to have to leap somebody to get on the field, and that's going to be really difficult to do with those three guys. So curious about it. I don't like that he's being considered this high. I think this is a little bit of the rookie bump in the shiny new things. There's definitely guys on this list, guys that we're not talking about even, that I would rather have. Hell, Quentin Johnston is going 66th right now, right? That's a full 11 receivers later. I'd rather have Quentin Johnston, right? Like a known commodity in this offense, who's going to factor in more than I think the rookie who's holding out right now in the middle of July. I don't know what his role is going to be. So for that, sure, fine. Rookie draft, go ahead, take him, stash him away in your dynasty. But redraft leagues, I'm not. He is not somebody that I am paying attention to.
Right. Yeah, I'm pretty well out on Trey Harris, where he's this season, right? Like this is a offense that will be passing will come at a premium with this offense, right? Like this is not one of those that I would anticipate the ball being hucked around the yard and Justin Herbert dropping back 40 to 50 times a game, and there's targets aplenty to share, right? Like this is an offense that targets are going to come at a premium. I think Ladd McConkey did a great job solidifying himself as that team's number one wide receiver. Mike Williams is on the PUP list, but we may see him come back. And if he does, where does he slot into this? You mentioned Quentin Johnston in there. So Harris is a guy that I think is going to have to kind of work up and earn a spot on this and playing time when this thing's all said and done. And a guy that's coming in as a rookie, I don't want to really be spending capital on a guy that's holding out on a rookie deal going into training camp when that's those reps and learning the system and all of that is incredibly valuable, and time away from that doesn't really help that develop the chemistry with the quarterbacks, develop the the understanding around the offense and putting the reps in, like lots of things here that just point to me that being out on Trey Harris for redraft this year. Any other thoughts on Trey Harris? All righty. Let's go ahead and take a look at Rashid Shaheed. And Rashid Shaheed is coming back off of an injury, right? He tore his meniscus last season. So in an injury shortened year, 20 receptions, 41 targets, 349 yards, 3 touchdowns. Also had 6 rushing attempts for 29 yards. Thoughts on Rashid Shaheed?
So he's coming off of the injury. There's strike one. Strike two, who's throwing him the football there in New Orleans? So that's strike two. Strike three, Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave and Brandon Cooks and Jawan Johnson and Taysom Hill and do I need to keep going? Where is Rashid Shaheed going to fit in? Even healthy, right? In 2023, played 15 games. He had 46 catches, 75 targets, 5 touchdowns. Like it was serviceable, right? But it's not, blow your socks off. So I guess where he's going is probably about where I think he finishes. To me, that's not all that exciting. I'm a little leery of all New Orleans pass catchers because I just don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be. No thank you on Rashid Shaheed.
And also to mention too, new head coach, new offensive scheme down there as well, right? But all of that being said, and I do think that you made some terrific points there about, coming off of an injury, the quarterback, the other competition there. This is a guy that I still think slots in as the number 2 wide receiver on this team, right? Like I think it's Chris Olave, then Rashid Shaheed, and Rashid Shaheed has the big play home run ability, has the ability, speed wise, just to pull away. This is a guy that I don't mind taking the dart throw on here in the later rounds, right? If I'm picking up as a 5th wide receiver, this is one of those that the things can align in a way that we see a top 36 wide receiver finish when it's all said and done. And at worst case, you're drafting him about as his floor, I think. So I really don't have a problem putting Rashid Shaheed on my roster. And this is one of those that when we look up at the end of the year, wouldn't be surprised if we see between 50 and 60 receptions and around 800 yards. Like this is a guy that can make the big plays. So I do think that there is some value here with Rashid Shaheed. Any other thoughts on Rashid Shaheed? All right, awesome. Let's go ahead and head on over and talk about Jaden Higgins. And Jaden Higgins, last season playing with Iowa State, coming in as a rookie with the Texans here as a 2nd round pick. Thoughts on Jaden Higgins?
That was one. Again, so we've talked already about Houston pass catchers, right? And I really like Christian Kirk this year. This is going to be a guy who's going to push Christian Kirk, and I think is probably going to fit in behind Christian Kirk. Now I say that Christian Kirk is going to play a different position there, be more of the slot receiver. We suppose that Jaden Higgins is going to kind of line up opposite of Nico Collins, and that may benefit him in that, attention is going to be paid to Nico Collins and Christian Kirk. So does Jaden Higgins, does he get past Tank Dell, right? What's the injury on Tank Dell? Do you remember what he had?
Not offhand. I'd have to look it up.
Knee surgery he had. So I'm not sure when he's going to be back. I don't know too much about Tank's status, but we do know that he's going to have to compete with Tank Dell to be opposite of Nico Collins if Tank is healthy. So, I think this is a case of, the rookie is enticing, but I don't know that the rookie finishes, screamingly ahead of wide receiver 53. I think it's going to be difficult for him to do that. So I'd much rather have Christian Kirk, and I can get Christian Kirk 20 picks later, so almost 2 full rounds later. I'd take that in a heartbeat.
Fair enough. And Tank Dell is expected to miss all of 2025 with that injury, right? It happened late in the season.
Yeah, that may change some things, but again, I think I still think it's going to be difficult. It does make him a little bit more enticing because he is probably next in line to fill that role. But there is still a John Mechie, Braxton Berrios is on this team. Like it could be crowded. to say the least.
Right. Mechie is the guy I'm not really worried about, right? He's coming towards the end of that rookie deal, hasn't really done anything to solidify playing time in his years with the organization. Braxton Berrios, special teams guy, not really worried about that one there. I do think Jaden Higgins, money tends to talk, right? When it comes to these players and the deals that they get. And Houston went out and did something unprecedented by signing him to a fully guaranteed contract as a second round player. And it has caused a bit of an uproar in the league, right? With 30 of the 32 second round picks not signed because they're waiting for guaranteed money as well and pushing for that. And so very interesting to kind of see that play out with Jaden Higgins. I'm putting him on my roster as a wide receiver 5 on that. Well, yes, I do think Christian Kirk has a very good season and I can get him at a discount. I don't necessarily mind still taking Jaden Higgins where he's coming off the board. This is a guy that can have tremendous upside in this offense, right? Like when we talked about Christian Kirk, we think that he's going to play more as the slot guy and a slot in there. I think Jaden Higgins with his size has the ability to be that outside wide receiver opposite of Nico Collins, and we'll see the field a fair bit. And I do think that this is a guy that you can draft as a wide receiver 5, and he does pose like fringe wide receiver 2 upside on this one. So I don't mind the dart throw, right? And I certainly don't mind taking him as my 5th wide receiver. This is one of those that when I get into this kind of range, though, I'm looking at this. Okay, do I want Jaden Higgins? Do I want to go Christian Kirk? Christian Kirk, probably a little bit safer value on this thing. Jaden Higgins, a little bit more home run potential. And when I'm down here in the 11th round, 10th round, I'm looking more for some of that home run upside. And I do like Jaden Higgins a lot for that aspect. Any other thoughts on Jaden Higgins? All right, let's go ahead and head on over and hit up Keon Coleman. And Keon Coleman last year, 29 receptions, 57 targets, 556 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 rushing attempt for 9 yards. Thoughts on Keon Coleman?
So only played 13 games. I think there was a lot of excitement around him going to Buffalo's high-powered offense and the potential for him to have a breakout rookie year, especially with the departure of Stephon Diggs there in Buffalo. It's like, okay, who's going to step up? Well, it ended up being Khalil Shakir, who stepped up and became kind of Josh Allen's go-to target. And then there's just kind of like a lot of, in this receiving room. Dalton Kincaid was 2nd on the team in targets. Keon Coleman was 3rd on the team in targets. So that's what you have to contend with when it comes to Josh Allen as your quarterback, is that the ball's going to get spread around, right? The most targets that any receiver saw in this Buffalo offense was Shakir at 100. But then you had, Mac Hollins had basically the same amount of targets as Keon Coleman. Granted, he played 4 more games, so that target share is a little different. But Curtis Samuel played 14 games and had, 11 fewer targets. So it's tough in this offense to figure out, who's going to get the ball. I think a lot of people were upset because Keon Coleman didn't live up to expectations. So that's probably what's causing him to drop a little bit here. But I don't mind where he's at. I don't hate this. I think there's value here, and I think that he's a solid piece of this Buffalo offense. And I'd have to think that he takes another step here in his sophomore season. So I'm going to keep my tabs on where Keon Coleman is, especially as I try to, fill out my wide receiver room. 52nd wide receiver off the board. I don't mind taking him here and hoping that he can return value and finish somewhere, in wide receiver 3 territory even.
Fair enough. I don't know. This is a guy that I feel like you're kind of, you're drafting what you get, right? Like I don't know that we're going to see him ultimately outshine this draft capital. I do think that's you're drafting him in the 50s is probably about where we're going to see him finish, right? There may be a little bit of uptick closer to, fringe wide receiver 4, but this is a guy that I'm just willing to be wrong about and not looking to necessarily add on to my roster. So it's a guy that you're drafting as a wide receiver 5, and I think he probably finishes about wide receiver 5 when it's all said and done. So not, I really think that there's some good things around, what he does on the field, things like that. It just doesn't tend to translate for fantasy success. So I am fading Keon Coleman here a little bit this year. Any other thoughts on Keon Coleman?
No.
All righty, let's go ahead and head on over and take a look at Brandon Ayuk. And Brandon Ayuk last season, 25 receptions on 47 targets, 374 yards through the air, 0 touchdowns. Thoughts on Brandon
Ayuk? Do you know about Murphy's Law? Do you know what Murphy's Law is?
Yes.
Anything that can go wrong will go wrong.
Correct.
It feels like the San Francisco 49ers 2024 season, it started out bad with the CMC injury, and then it just got worse from there, which is hard to fathom that the CMC injury isn't the worst thing to happen to your team. So Brandon Ayuk tears his ACL in week 7, misses the rest of the season, and truth be told, wasn't all that exciting. In the weeks leading up to that, had a wide receiver 11 finish, the only wide receiver 1 finish he had in week 5 against Arizona. And he didn't find the end zone, right? So that's disappointing. It could be that he starts on the PUP, which is a mandatory, 4 games, I think, that he has to miss to start the season. If he's on the PUP, he could play week 1. I just am not sure that I'm willing to take that risk on him. So, in redraft, I'm not in. A best ball candidate, sure, but I think you're going to have to pay attention in redrafts if you draft Brandon Ayuk, because I don't know when he's going to return to the field and how effective he's going to be when he does.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Most of a lot of guys that are coming back from an ACL type of injury, those are guys usually that I'm wanting to wait a year, like a full season removed from that injury before I'm looking to add him to my roster. It's not really going to be any different here with Brandon Ayuk. One, there's a question surrounding whether he'll play, whether he'll not play, what that season's going to start out like there as well. So a guy that I'm not going to be looking to add to really any of my rosters. I say that, but one of those that when you get down in this type of range, there is still that potential upside for it. But this is a guy that I'm drafting with a big kind of grain of salt, so to speak, and really just kind of seeing how things progress and how we start, the reports coming out of camp and how that kind of looks and works a little bit more so, because this is one that I think even if he does come back, I don't know that we're going to see him be the target leader on this team when it's all said and done at the end of the season, right? Like I do think that this will be a little bit of a slower roll coming back here, and a guy that I'm willing to let somebody else deal with that on their roster. Any other thoughts on Brandon Ayuk?
No.
All righty. Let's go ahead and head on over and talk about Emeka Egbuka. And Emeka Egbuka last year was not in the NFL. He was a wide receiver with Ohio State, coming in as a rookie first-round draft pick for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Thoughts on Emeka Egbuka?
Again, this is that thing where we've gotten a very talented wide receiver. This is Luther Burden 2.0, right? But he's going to a little bit better of an offense. So I think that the the intrigue is a little bit better, but man, he's going to have to get through and compete with Mike Evans for targets, compete with Chris Godwin if he, however healthy he is. Jalen McMillan is also on this team. Kate Otten is on this team. So there's only one football, and there's a lot of mouths to feed there in Tampa. So I'm not entirely sold on Emeka Egbuka. I think this was a draft pick that Tampa made for the future. I think that they wanted to get him in, get him comfortable, and this was a play for if and when Mike Evans starts to decline, if and when Chris Godwin starts to decline, you've given yourself some insurance on it. So I don't know that this year is exactly the year that you want Emeka Egbuka, but next year, let's talk.
Fair enough. And welcome in, Kevin. We got
Hi, Kevin.
The trio is complete. So, Kevin, we'll bring you up. We're talking the wide receivers in the ADP. We're on Emeka Egbuka right now. Any thoughts on Emeka Egbuka?
I think in deeper leagues, I am going to take a shot on this guy. And I think it's mainly because when you see players coming back from knee injuries, typically that first year is a little bit rougher for them, right? Like they're trying to be able to have confidence in their cuts. Their explosiveness typically fades away a little bit. And it just kind of takes them a full year to get back in the swing. And Egbuka does mirror what Chris Godwin does in the slot pretty stinking well. So in that regard, I'm not going to grab him anywhere and everywhere, but I am going to take some stabs on Egbuka. Again, because that offense is pretty fluid. I think if anything, what might make me take a bit of a pause is the Tristan Wirfs surgery that he had earlier this week, right? Like that might cause me to fade that ever so slightly, but I do think he's going to see the ball. You're not drafting the guy in the second round for nothing, right? Like, yes, a play for the future, but there is a way, and they're going to scheme him in for now due to the age of Mike Evans, due to the injury concern with recovery for Chris Godwin. So again, I'm not going to grab him all over the place, but I am going to take some calculated risks on Egbuka. We saw what happened last year when Evans and Godwin both went down. Guys needed to step up, right? And not that we want injury to happen, but as Alex alluded to, Mike Evans is another year older. Chris Godwin's recovering from injury. So I think that there's going to be a place for Egbuka to be able to set himself apart here as kind of their alpha for the future. We'll see bits and pieces of it this year. So I'll have them sparingly, but not a ton.
Fair enough. And this is one of those that, where he's coming off the board, I think that's probably pretty fair value where he's coming off the board, right? Like if Evans misses time in here, that could allow Egbuka to really skyrocket and really outproduce the ADP. But if those guys don't miss time, I think that this is kind of about where you're going to see him end up. Another guy too that came on that they drafted going into last year and had a really strong season with when Evans missed time and when Godwin's missed time was Jalen McMillan, who really kind of stepped up there. One of the guys that kind of grew into that role, and a guy that I think will still see a kind of earn a place into this offense moving forward as well. So, it'll be interesting to see how these pieces kind of work and maneuver back and forth there. A guy that I'm not looking to add to a ton of my my rosters, but when I get down there and kind of that pick 100 may take a shot on one or two. I do like him more so in a best ball type of format. Simply from the standpoint that we could see a couple, one or two blow up weeks, and if I can get 2 or 3 weeks out of a guy in this range, that's pretty usable. Any other thoughts on Emeka Egbuka? All righty, let's go ahead and head on over. We're going to talk about Michael Pittman Jr. And Michael Pittman Jr. last year, 69 receptions, 111 targets, 808 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Thoughts on Michael Pittman?
I know everyone's kind of fading Pittman a little bit with the down year last year, the uncertainty at quarterback, but I feel like this slides a little bit too much. So I'm going to be grabbing some pieces of Michael Pittman there. Whether it's a step forward at the quarterback position between Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson, or just the fact that he kind of returns back to what he was in 23 or 22. There's a ton of upside there, and not that he's ever going to finish as a wide receiver one, but I think you can absolutely get top 24 value out of him in the right settings there. So again, I'm not going to grab him all over the place. It's going to be a little calculated. It's going to be kind of depending on where some of my roster construction is. But, as we've seen, especially in 3 wide receiver leagues, like you can't have enough depth. And we saw that last year with all the wide receiver injuries. So I'm not going to sit here and say absolutely not. It's going to be calculated, but I see a path where he finishes inside the top 24. Whether that comes to fruition or not, we'll see. But when you're picking down here, like I'm all about the upside, and I can get some decent upside with Michael Pittman.
Well, I'll build on Kevin's argument here and say, yeah, it was a pretty iffy season last year, right? And we didn't know the quarterback situation, which we don't know this year. There's the injury, that he dealt with, which we think that he might be dealing again with this year, or he might not. You don't know. And he still finished wide receiver 43, right? So he was dealing with all that, and he still outperformed this ADP. So like, it feels like there's value there, right? Like this ADP, like Kevin said, this feels too low when it comes to the slide. Like the slide feels too big. So I don't mind him either at this point. Yeah, the quarterback situation, it would be nice to get figured out. But when you're talking about, pass catchers there in Indianapolis, there isn't, I mean, there's a deep threat in A.D. Mitchell, but he's not going to, be a consistent deep threat. Alec Pierce is there. Josh Downs is there. You're going to have to contend with Tyler Warren, but I think that's a difficult thing for a tight end to make that much of an impact, that early. And he'll be learning under Mo Alley Cox, who's still serviceable. But I do think that Michael Pittman is kind of the first mouth to get fed in this offense. So I think that there is I think for sure he outperforms this ADP at 49. At 103rd overall, that feels is a great bargain.
Right. I mean, this is a guy that you can take as your 5th wide receiver, where he's kind of coming off the board currently. And there certainly is a world in which he can finish as a wide receiver 2 when it's all said and done, right? Like this is a guy that has the talent to get up there and be inside the top 24 when it comes to wide receivers, right? There is those question marks about the quarterback play on this one. And right, like, we don't know what that's going to look like as this camp battle ensues between Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones, and who's ultimately going to win that starting job. And then furthermore, whoever wins that starting job, if they're able to take that step forward and really keep him fed. But this is a guy that there's not many guys that when you're down here talking a guy you're drafting in the 100th plus draft pick, as a wide receiver 5, that's likely going to see more than 100 targets, right? So Michael Pittman can get you there with typically with a volume play. And so this is one of those that I really do like the value when looking at this thing. And I think that you're drafting him at his absolute floor, and the ceiling could be as high as a wide receiver 2, right? Like getting up in that fringe wide receiver 23 to 27 type of range. So I really like this one. Any other thoughts on Michael Pittman? All righty, let's go ahead and head on over and take a look at Darnell Mooney. And Darnell Mooney last year, 64 receptions, 106 targets, 992 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Thoughts on Darnell Mooney?
Love him for best ball. Love him for best ball because he has that explosiveness, right? He showed that last season where it only takes a play or two, and all of a sudden you're staring at the back of his jersey. He's walking in for 6 and just kind of racking up the points, right? Like he's obviously going to be further down the priority list behind a Bijan, behind a Drake London, but Penix is going to need outlets. And if he's not going to, I'm not going to say trust, but if he's a little reserved about the tight coverage, well, there's the deep outlet too. So I do think that there's a world where this absolutely works. I like him a lot in best ball, sparingly. In redraft, there's a couple other guys around this area that I do favor a little bit more as far as consistency with true upside. But if you're going on a home run week or just a home run flex play or something like that, there's absolutely a home for Darnell Mooney, even with Michael Penix being quarterback. So I like the player. I think there's upside there, but consistency is kind of key. And I think that, yes, he could jump off the page and score you 20 fantasy points one week. But if you're not careful, there's going to be another week where he's only going to get you 5, and you're going to be stubbing your toe a little bit.
Yeah, boom bust for sure. But I think I like Darnell Mooney more than some of the guys that are going to be around in this area. I mean, the guy is on the field a ton, right? His snap shares up over 90%. Last year, with obviously Kirk Cousins played majority of the season, and Penix only got into a handful of games there at the end. But Darnell Mooney was, second on this team in targets, second on the team in receptions, and second on the team in receiving touchdowns. So, like, to me, a second option for a team, is like that's good enough for me to want this, to want him on my roster as a solid second option. So I like him. I like him in a redraft, especially at this point. And I think he's, as your 4th wide receiver that you've taken, at 48, that's about where it puts him, right? That's a solid 4th wide receiver and a strong flex play that you can have week in and week out. That you're not necessarily hoping that he wins you the week, but his contributions will be helpful. So in the right mindset, Darnell Mooney's, I think, a home run for you.
Yeah, I think that there's certainly some good things with that Darnell Mooney brings to the table, right? And Alex, I really like what you brought up there, that he has about a 92% snap share when it's all said and done, right? Like, he is on the field, and there's very much that old saying that the best ability is availability sometimes. And, when he's on the field constantly, that certainly helps out. Another guy here that, wouldn't surprise you if he sees around 100 targets when it's all said and done at the end of the season, right? Like, again, a guy that you can get a bit of a volume play at a wide receiver 4. Like, I do like that aspect to it. I do think that there is a whole lot of boom bust, though, that's going to happen with Darnell Mooney and this Falcons offense. It's not going to surprise me if we look up at the end of the season and we see somewhere around about 800 yards receiving. I think that we probably see him in that 50 to 60 reception range. But with that, I think it's going to come in a streaky type of format there, and I think that to Kevin's point, the consistency that you might be hoping for is not going to be there, and it may be a little frustrating for you on trying to pick the week. So absolutely love him for a best ball play. When it comes down to the season long on this one, this is a guy that I really don't mind drafting him where he's coming off the board, but I'm drafting him with the mindset and the knowledge that this is going to be a guy that I'm going to have to really try and play a matchup and hope that I'm right on the week. And if it's not that week, I'm just going to have to factor that in and try and make it up from some other spots throughout my roster that week. But I certainly don't mind where the where he's coming off the board. Any other thoughts on Darnell Mooney? All righty, let's go ahead and head on over and take a look at Cooper Kupp. And Cooper Kupp last year, 67 receptions, 100 targets, 710 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Thoughts on Cooper Kupp?
So for me, Cooper Kupp is a guy I'm staying away from this year. I don't know that I love that fit overall in Seattle. I just don't see them throwing the ball a ton. And as much as I like Kenneth Walker this season, I know they're going to have to throw the ball at some point, but I just don't know that we're going to see the Cooper Kupp that I think a lot of people are drafting based off of the name value, right? Like, I think we're going to see 5, maybe 6 targets a week for Cooper Kupp, depending on the week. So again, I think it's going to be kind of like Darnell Mooney as far as reception totals. Maybe the yardage is slightly different, but the thing that Darnell Mooney has, right, to Alex's point of liking some guys better in that situation, is Darnell Mooney doesn't have an injury history like Cooper Kupp does. So for me, we get around this pick 100, and I'm really looking at tight end anyway. Like I'm really kind of looking towards Mark Andrews or Evan Ingram as a guy that I really, really like. If I've been waiting on quarterback, maybe a Brock Purdy or a Dak Prescott, like all those guys are sitting around pick 100. So I think I'm going to be looking at a number of those options and just kind of fading away from Cooper Kupp and not dealing with his new location and his injury history and the lack of passing that I think Seattle's going to implore this year.
I usually agree with you, Kevin, but I don't on this one. Cooper Kupp, to me, this screams Adam Thielen going to the Panthers back in 2023, right? We all kind of saw Adam Thielen leave the Vikings. That was a, prolific offense. He was part of that dynamic duo with Justin Jefferson. He leaves, goes to Carolina, and puts up 1,000-yard season. He scored, hold on, I had it here and then I lost it. 4 touchdowns. So it was a good season for Adam Thielen there. On a team where he needed to establish himself, right? They had Chuba Hubbard on that team who led the way. DJ Chark, it was obviously Bryce Young's first year. So he was a nice element for a young quarterback. I think the quarterback play is better in Seattle, right? With Sam Darnold coming over, coming off of his Renaissance campaign there in Minnesota. So for me, Cooper Kupp is going to be the adult in the room for Jackson Smith and Jigba and MVS. And he is going to be the guy that is reliable for Sam Darnold when it comes to somebody, that he can throw the football to and know that it's going to get caught. So I really, really like Cooper Kupp this year. I mean, I really like Cooper Kupp this year, and I hope that it comes to fruition because I think I'm going to be getting plenty of him in various formats because I just feel like he's poised to have a don't you wish you would have kept me LA year.
Fair enough, and certainly some good points, but I'm out on Cooper Kupp, right? Like this is one of those that when it comes down into this, like I really don't want any part of Kupp in this type of draft range, right? I think there's a lot of things right now that you made some really good points, but there's a lot of things that just lead me to be a nope on this one, right? The quarterback gets significantly downgraded from Matt Stafford to Sam Darnold. Play calling, right? Sean McVay to Kubiak. I think that also gets downgraded there as well, especially with the scheme that Kubiak wants to run in more of that zone run and run first type of offense there. This is also a guy that I think is going to be playing second fiddle to JSN when it's all said and done. And I'm thinking that when we look up at the end of the season and we may see Cooper Kupp, who has been that had a lot of injuries to deal with and has yet to play more than 12 games in any of the last 3 seasons. That just leads me to a nope on this one. And I think that we're going to look up at the end of the season, and wouldn't surprise me to see him get to like 60 to 65 receptions and around about 650 to 700 yards, maybe about 4 to 5 touchdowns. Like I'm seeing, you're kind of drafting what you're getting, and not seeing much upside on this one. Any other thoughts on Cooper Kupp?
I think one thing I'm going to bring up, Cooper Kupp is not afraid to stick his nose in and block. He did that really well for Sean McVay. I think we will see a pretty large snap share for him because of that. But because he's so willing as a blocker, I think that's part of what adds to my reservation as a season-long fantasy asset. Not that he's not going to get the playing time when he's healthy, but you step in so many times and you take those blocks and you're kind of doing your job. Each one of those hits wears on a guy, and I get it. His issues have been more hamstring related and kind of his knees, not necessarily the upper body, but I don't know. There's a world, but what's his ceiling, right? Like if you're drafting him at 47, is his ceiling 36? Like, and are you happy with that? If his ceiling's 36 and you're happy with that, okay, fine. But we just talked about Michael Pittman, whose ceiling's inside the top 24 if things go right. Worst quarterback situation, but the true alpha. And there's some guys further down on this list, and I know I missed it, so I'm not going to rehash a bunch of this stuff, but there's guys further down on this list that you guys already covered who I like more. I feel like the upside there is worth the gamble on other players.
Fair enough. Any other thoughts on Cooper Kupp?
I know 2 guys I don't have to worry about drafting him when we
That's
when we
right.
get together in the home league.
That's right.
Very true. It's very true. Alrighty, let's go ahead and head on over and take a look at Josh Downs. And Josh Downs last year, 72 receptions, 107 targets, 803 yards, 5 touchdowns. Thoughts on Josh Downs?
Josh Downs scares me a little bit because as much as I see Pittman's potential inside the top 24 best case scenario, I don't think Downs can get that high on his own based off of the routes he runs and kind of how they use it. Like, I think he can get inside of wide receiver, 35, maybe 32, something like that. But again, there's nothing wrong with that, but he's going 93rd overall, correct? Yeah, I don't know that that's where my huckleberry is. Good player, like I like what he is, but I want the big body guy with a big frame on a quarterback who's not accurate, right? We saw this was the Cam Newton effect from years ago, right? What they do with Cam Newton, they surrounded him with big, long-armed pass catchers to help the off-target throws. Josh Downs is not quite that guy, but in the right situation, he does have the breakaway speed that Pittman does not coming out of the slot. But I don't know. Downs is a 50-50 for me, honestly, guys. Like I don't hate the kid, but I'm not in love with him this season. And I think if there was a better quarterback, maybe I'd sing differently or sing a different tune, on him. But the situation scares me, and I'm not convinced he's the alpha. I still think Pittman is, so I don't understand why we'd be drafting Downs ahead of Pittman.
It is remarkable the difference, and it's not surprising, but it is remarkable the difference between when Joe Flacco was playing and when Anthony Richardson was playing, and how much that benefited or didn't benefit Josh Downs. So if Anthony Richardson is starting, then it makes me very leery about Josh Downs. If it is going to be Daniel Jones, who is probably closer to Joe Flacco than he is Anthony Richardson in his throwing the football capabilities, although who knows? I feel a little bit better about Josh Downs, but I think you're right, Kevin. I think the value is not in Josh Downs at pick 93. The value is in Michael Pittman, almost a full round later, right? So I think that's where you're getting the better value play there. There's probably a world in which Josh Downs finishes around or even maybe above Michael Pittman. Like that world exists, in that all worlds exist, but I think it's far more likely that Pittman is going to exceed his ADP way more than what Josh Downs does.
Yeah, fair enough. This is the one thing that I think could be of benefit for Josh Downs, right? Like he does a great job getting down the field and making downfield catches on this one. And that was one thing that Anthony Richardson did pretty well last year, was actually throwing the ball deep and able to connect on several of those deep passes, right? A lot of those went to Alex Pierce, but Josh Downs certainly could be that guy this year. Now, that being said, I agree with you guys that I think that Michael Pittman is still the guy that's going to see the most targets on this team and going to be the volume-based receiver on this one. And with that, I have a hard time taking a guy ahead of a guy that I think is going to be the volume leader on this thing. And so I think Josh Downs is a guy that you're drafting as a wide receiver 4, potentially could get you wide receiver 3 upside. But I do still see the upside being higher on Michael Pittman, and that's the place that I'm going to go on this one. So I do think that Josh Downs is an intriguing player and certainly can provide some upside, but I just don't see that this one being a deal that he can drastically outkick his coverage on this one and get up into a top 24 wide receiver finish. I think this is one that ceiling is going to top out at maybe wide receiver 30 on a terrific year for Josh Downs. Any other thoughts on Josh Downs? Alrighty, let's go ahead and head on over and we'll take a look at Matthew Golden. And Matthew Golden coming into the league with the rookie going to Green Bay. Thoughts on Matthew Golden?
I took a stab on him in a couple dynasty leagues. I think I understand why he fits in a best ball league, just with some of his skill set and the speed, being able to take advantage of a couple really high profile weeks. But in a redraft situation, no, thank you. That ball in Green Bay it gets spread around for between so many receivers and the tight ends. That I played that game with Jaden Reed last year, and I'm not going back to the well for him or Matthew Golden this year until I see marketable improvement. So, I'll take a shot in the best ball, but in a redraft, I'm going to pass.
Give me him in best ball. I'm out on him on a redraft for all those same reasons that Kevin just said. It's not just Jaden Reed. It's Romeo Dobbs. It's Christian Watson, maybe. It's Dontavian Wicks. It's Tucker Kraft. It's Luke Musgrave. If he's going to go off, it's going to be few and far in between. And I think he does. I think he has big weeks. But I just think that you're going to take a lot of lumps in the process. So, I'm out in a redraft. He's not something that I'm looking for, but in a best ball, I think he's a perfect best ball candidate.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly the chance that he'll get you 2, maybe 3 weeks in a best ball format, and that's kind of where you're drafting him. That's kind of what you're looking for there. But I'm firmly out on Matthew Golden when it comes to redraft, right? Like I don't want any part of this one. Read a lot to what both of you guys have said that. There's a lot of mouths to feed in this one. Yes, I get that the draft capital is there for him. But at the same time, like this is also a team that's coming off of a very heavy run offense last year with much the same cast of characters and the same head coaching scheme. So, even if they return back to more of a balanced approach, there's still a ton of mouths to feed, and I don't know that we're going to necessarily see the ball get funneled into Matthew Golden to the point where we're going to see him really return a ton of value on this one. I think that you're trying to draft them, what you're going to get, and along the way in a redraft, it's going to be very frustrating if you're trying to rely on them in any sort of week in, week out type of performance. Any other thoughts on Matthew Golden?
No more thoughts on Matthew Golden, but hilariously, the next guy we talk about, we just got done talking about, and it speaks to the volume of just like people just don't know what to make of this offense, right? Like I have no idea.
Right. Yep. And all right, well, let's go ahead and head on over, and we will talk about Jaden Reed. And Jaden Reed last year, 55 receptions, 75 targets, 857 yards, 6 touchdowns, 20 rushing attempts, 163 yards on the ground, and 1 rushing touchdown. Thoughts on Jaden Reed?
If someone were to basically pin me down and make me choose, Jaden Reed is the Packer receiver that I would gamble on yet again. But luckily, no one's doing that. So again, I am going to pass on Jaden Reed. I played that experiment last year. I was very frustrated for the better part of the season. And I'm not looking to do that again. I would rather look where the target tree is a bit narrower, and go from there. So great player, a very explosive gadgetry, even right because of their ability in the run game with the end arounds and some other things that they're doing with him. But again, because the Packers spread the ball around so much, he's trying to do all of this with, 6 targets a game, where I think you could look elsewhere and get 6 targets that are maybe a bit further down the field for that home run threat and not so much run after the catch from Jaden Reed. So he's a guy that, much like Matthew Golden, I'm going to be out on.
He made everybody look so smart week 1 last year. Wide receiver 1 overall finish in week 1 after having, his draft stock just skyrocket from the year before. And then he made everyone so frustrated after week 1. Now, don't get me wrong, there was a wide receiver 2 overall finish in there in week 4. But then after that, it was abysmal. It was certainly not where you were drafting him, where those finishes were, or meeting the expectation. I think it's the same thing with Matthew Golden. Again, there's a reason why these two guys are next to each other, and they're the 2 highest rated receivers on this Packers offense, is because there's just not a lot to go around up there, and there's just not a lot for one person to really succeed there. So, for the same reasons I just said, Matthew Golden is a great best ball candidate, I think Jaden Reed's a great best ball candidate because of what you said, Kevin, the gadget play that could go for a big thing, go for a big yardage or go for a touchdown even and get you the bonus there. But in redraft, I have no interest in taking a Jaden Reed this year. It was fun watching Kevin deal with it last year because it was the only the only enjoyment I could take out of his team was watching that guy piss him off.
So bad.
And Jaden Reed's an interesting one, right? Like, this is a guy that likely will return value with where he's coming off the board. As that wide receiver 44, and there's a very good chance that he gets close to fringe wide receiver 2 when it's all said and done, right? Like, this is a guy that very much could have the outcomes be in the wide receiver 20 to wide receiver 30 range, right? Like, this is a guy that can certainly outkick his coverage, so to speak, on this one. But as you guys have already mentioned, that will likely come in a very frustrating boom bust type of week. For best ball, yeah, I'm okay for that roller coaster ride on that one because I don't have to deal with that one and deal with the, hey, he just uncorked and did phenomenal. Look at it. Oh, he's on my bench this week, and so start him the next week, and you get a wide receiver 60 finish on the week, and absolutely blows up and loses you the week type of thing. But yeah, again, this is a Packers offense that I think there's a lot of question marks coming in here as far as what this receiver room really looks like, how the ball is going to be spread around, and again, a team that again was heavily run oriented last year with a very similar group of players that even if we see this thing work its way back towards a balanced offense, this is a guy that you're hoping can get up to a wide receiver, fringe wide receiver 24 finish with like 90 opportunities on the deal. So has to be highly efficient to get there, and that can be a bit tricky, bit troublesome. And a guy that I'd rather not deal with the headache for redraft. Any other thoughts on Jaden Reed? All righty, let's go ahead and head on over and take a look at Stefon Diggs. And Stefon Diggs last year, 47 receptions, 64 targets, 496 yards, 3 touchdowns. Thoughts on Stefon Diggs?
So injury shortened last year, right? As Diggs had the knee injury. He is a guy that I am absolutely targeting. And he's a guy that I think we're going to continue to see his draft stock climb as we get closer to the regular season. But I'm happy to draft Diggs, and I'm just going to protect it around it, right? Knowing that maybe it's possible there's a pup stint or whatever that looks like. But when he is healthy and when he gets back on the field, I think Drake May is going to target him a ton. And on a team where maybe we're not in love with so many of the pass catching options there in New England, I think Diggs, there's a reason they brought him in and paid him. And I think Diggs could be extremely useful towards the back half of the season once he gets everything kind of underneath him and gets used to playing with Drake May. So Diggs is a guy that I am absolutely going to be focusing in on. Take him over both of the Green Bay receivers we just talked about. I'm going to take him over our next player that we're getting ready to talk about, and I'll share more thoughts about that here in a minute. But I absolutely love what Diggs can bring to this offense and kind of be their true alpha. So I think you're getting a great value at pick 88, wide receiver 43.
Yeah, so here's where I struggle with Stefon Diggs is like, how much of Stefon Diggs are you going to get, right? I know that the injury happened partway through last year, right? In week 8. He's a freak of nature athlete, right? So he might be back by week 1. He might not be back by week 1. I think if you draft Stefon Diggs, you're going to have to play the long game, right? So, and where he's coming off the board, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? So like you already have conceivably 3 wide receivers on your roster at this point, and he's your 4th option that will eventually work his way into being one of those top 3 options on your roster. So I just think you have to be patient with him and you have to play the long game, because I think it's going to take time for him to get into a rhythm with Drake May. I think it's going to take time for him to be 100% healthy and be 100% Stefon Diggs. But you're right, Kevin. Like, I don't know who else Drake May is really going to want to throw the ball to there. So if when you draft him, know that you're going to have to let that develop and don't get antsy and drop him after he's ineffective in week 1 if he plays, or week 2 if he plays. It's going to take time for him to develop chemistry with Drake May, but when he does, I think it could be very fruitful.
Right, and this is a guy that is just a few seasons removed from a massive production type of deal, right? And that was a couple teams ago. Was still on the other side of 30, right? This is a guy that's coming in, entering the season, age 31, coming off of a significant knee injury, and this is a type of knee injury that typically when I'm looking at guys, I want them a full year removed from the injury, right? So this is more of one of those that typically I'd be looking at Stefon Diggs not this season but the year after, right? But that being said, this ADP is very enticing to me, simply from the standpoint that I can go out and I can pick him up with my wide receiver 4. Put him on my roster as that. And this is a guy that certainly could perform inside top 24 ability, right? Like he has that kind of upside. With that all being said and done, so this is a guy that I certainly don't mind this kind of draft capital, and I don't mind putting him on my roster. I do think there will be a little bit of growing pains. This might be a little bit slower out the gate, especially coming off of that knee injury, and especially with having to build the chemistry with Drake May. But this is a guy that coming down the end of the season could be a big boost for your team coming through there. It will likely be a bit of a bit of an experience, and some patience may be required to get through the first half of the season to start seeing some production there. But I do think the back half we can see a pretty good output there. Any other thoughts on Stephon Diggs? All righty, let's go ahead and take a look at Khalil Shakir. And Khalil Shakir last year, 76 targets, Khalil Shakir last year, 76 receptions, 100 targets, 821 receiving yards, and 4 touchdowns. Thoughts on Khalil Shakir?
I don't find him to be a sexy pick at all. And I realize that last year was a pretty solid year for him, but again, I think I would rather wait and then take his running mate in Keon Coleman. And I know you guys already covered him, but when I'm looking at upside, right, I'm looking for guys who can take over and insert themselves into my starting lineup and force me to make good, hard decisions. I don't see the upside with Shakir. I think he's running anywhere from wide receiver, 35 to 42. Like that's just kind of who he is. We're not going to see big blow up weeks. And we're still going to see a ton of weeks where, yeah, he catches 5 balls, but everything's so close to the line of scrimmage that he caught 5 balls and only gained 32 yards. Like that, I struggle with that because you're not even getting the yardage bonus, even with the lack of reception. So what they do in Buffalo is going to have to change a little bit with Shakir, but I think Keon Coleman, that's why they drafted him, to get down the field and be that intermediate to deep route runner and let Shakir do some of his damage underneath and hoping the coverage is off a little bit. So I'm most likely going to be passing on Shakir. I like what he does for the Buffalo Bills, but I don't like his lack of explosiveness down the field and ability to just have those big weeks to help carry your team. This is not your guy for that. He's more Mr. Consistent, and you just kind of know what you're getting week in and week out.
And I think that's why I like him, is that he is consistency, right? So you can take a flyer a little bit later on, right, and hope that somebody with boom bust potential can be the guy that you throw in your flex position and hope that he can get you more than that. But I mean, is it enough consistency, I think, is the question that you have to ask yourself. And it's not a ton. Kevin, to your point, I mean, the guy had a week where he was 7 catches on 7 targets for 65 yards. Like, yikes.
Right. So we covered both the Colts receivers this evening, and we covered 2 of the Buffalo receivers this evening, right?
Yeah.
So Downs, Pittman, Shakir, and Coleman. If you're drafting and you know you're going to end up with 2 of those 4 receivers, what combination are you going to be happiest with?
I think my happiest combination is Shakir and Pittman.
I think I'm leaning more the Pittman and Coleman route, simply from the standpoint I get to kick this pick later on, right? Because if I'm taking Khalil Shakir, I'm taking him with the 85th pick in that kind of range, right? Like you're talking 7th round eighth round capital. There are far more guys that I would rather take in that kind of range. Right. I would like, I wouldn't mind taking a TJ Hawkinson in that range, or a Kyler Murray. You're looking even outside of the wide receiver position there. Taking one of those guys, filling out that roster spot and being able to then kick that can on down the road. I don't know that Keon Coleman drastically outperforms Khalil Shakir this season, but from a draft capital perspective, I'd probably go that route and how I can construct a roster otherwise around that.
Fair. I would go Downs and Coleman. Right, there's a bit more risk involved in that play for sure. Right, I'm not taking the safest route. There's a bit more risk involved. I still have the big-bodied X, but again, when you're looking at where these guys are getting drafted, sometimes a round discount makes all the difference in the world, and I can get Pittman around later than Shakir, and I can get Coleman around later than Pittman, or up thereabouts. And sometimes that makes all the difference in the world, so that way I can fill in with a solid tight end, whether it's a Hawkinson, Evan Ingram, Kyler Murray, Brock Purdy, if I'm waiting on quarterback, right? It's like, what else can I fill in around those areas? And by the time I'm looking at my fourth and fifth receiver, I want upside. Like, I want nothing but potential upside. And so that's part of the reason Shakir doesn't do it for me. Like, I just don't see the pop. Like, if my number 2 wide receiver goes down and I have to plug Shakir in there, am I really happy about that? Or am I just limping through until my second wide receiver can get healthy again? Like, you're never excited about the possibility of what could come.
Fair enough. And I think I tend to agree with that thought process there as well, right? Like, if I'm taking Shakir, I'm drafting a wide receiver 4 that I'm hoping that I can play as a flex type of play once or twice during the season, and that's about all that's probably going to amount to. If I'm really having to rely on him season long, I'm not going to be a very happy camper about that one. I do think that the more I look at this Buffalo offense, though, and the pieces around it, there's really the only piece that I'm beginning to look at and go, oh, I think I want my roster, want that guy on my roster for fantasy is Josh Allen. Outside of that, it is starting to become a little bit as a buyer beware type of scenario when I look at a lot of these other positions and other players on the Buffalo Bills. Any other thoughts on Khalil Shakir?
Yeah, I still think I like the consistency. I get that where he's going isn't the friendliest. But I don't mind it. I think if you can get him at 85, like, I don't want to spend up on him, right? But I think if you can get him at 85, I'm okay with. I'm more than okay with it there.
Okay. All righty, let's go ahead and move on. We're going to talk about our last guy of the night here, and that is Ricky Parasol. And last year, Ricky Parasol missed a little bit of time, but in a shortened season, 31 receptions, 46 targets, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. Thoughts on Ricky Parasol?
Dude was shot.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I like Ricky Parasol. Like, again, first round draft pick, right? Missed most of his rookie season recovering from the gunshot wound. Came in and really started to make a bit of a difference there for the 49ers. Definitely showed up on the film. So this Niners team's interesting, right? I know you guys talked about Ayuk earlier, and I think Ayuk's probably getting a little bit too much hate. I don't know that he deserves to be that far down the list. I like Parasol a lot because Juwan Jennings is not the top receiver on that team, and he's already squawking about a new contract. And while these players are going to support each other and do anything, do what they can to kind of rally behind their guy, there's no reason, and a guy that we will get to next week is going to have a better season than Ricky Parasol, and probably not Brandon Ayuk either. So I like Ricky. I liked him more a couple weeks ago. His draft position's elevated quite a bit here in the last couple weeks. But Again, he is explosive. His injury downtime was not a knee. It was not soft tissue injury. Like the dude literally was shot in a convenience store robbery. So I don't hold that against him, other than just wrong place, wrong time. So he's an interesting play if you're grabbing a Niner receiver in this draft, and I think he's probably the guy with the highest ceiling out of any of the three. So to kind of get him strung out in the middle between where Jennings is going and then all the way down where Ayuk is going, I'm good to split the difference here and have Pearsall again, explosive upside. A guy that I can play if needed. If he turns out that he's Brock Purdy's guy, you slide him right up there and kind of let him ride here a little bit. But I would be very happy with Ricky Pearsall on my team as I'm drafting things out.
When we were talking about Brandon Ayuk earlier, I mentioned Murphy's Law, and anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And I don't even think that anybody thought that your first round pick gets shot in a robbery and misses time was on the bingo card. It is now. But like that was just such
2 years in a row, right? Because in 23 it was Brian Robinson.
Yeah, I guess it is on the bingo card. Watch out. Stop shooting each other, will you?
Both of them were victims. They weren't.
I know.
I know. This isn't
that's a
in the
thing
club.
No, I get
like
it, but
Plaxico.
Just like that was a generic to everyone. Stop shooting each other. So Ricky Pearsall, yeah, I mean it is a. I like him too. It's a little tough with where he's going right now. The Juwan Jennings situation is very interesting to me. If he gets out of town, then I kind of like Ricky Pearsall a lot more. But you do have to contend with the fact that Christian McCaffrey is supposedly back healthy and is a pass catcher, right? Like is a threat to catch passes, and will take away, balls that receivers and other pass catchers will see. So I think Pearsall's interesting.
Purdy was better and had better numbers to the wide receivers 2 years ago when McCaffrey was healthy than what he did last year when McCaffrey missed, though. Like McCaffrey adds a layer to this offense and actually frees them up, in my opinion.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that, but still there's only a finite amount of plays, right? So while the pass catchers did better with Christian McCaffrey, which I think is going to be a thing again this year because defenses have to respect where Christian McCaffrey is, right? Like you have to roll a safety down to combat that. A linebacker is not keeping up with Christian McCaffrey. Some of them are, but like typically your middle linebacker is not going to keep up with Christian McCaffrey. So you have to bring a defensive back down to cover that. And that opens up part of the field that you have to, that defenses have to contend with. So I understand that. And I just think there's a finite number of plays that they run that where the ball goes. So I think that, again, Pearsall I think is interesting. I want to wait to see what this Juwan Jennings thing is. I'm glad I'm not drafting right now. I think if I was, I would lean towards taking Pearsall, but I think his draft stock only continues to go up, and I think at a certain point we're going to reach a point where it's beyond where I think he finishes. So get him if you can get him at the discount at 41. I don't know.
One of those three guys will end up as a wide receiver too.
Who? Of who?
Of the Niner receivers. Jennings, Ayuk, Pearsall. One of those three guys will end up in the top 24.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Right. So it's just a gamble, right? To your point, like, 41 to 22. Okay. Like, I mean, hell, it's even better if Ayuk is, right? What was he? 50, 51, 52, all the way up there? Like, hell yeah. But
and unlikely for Ayuk because he's also projected right now And it's possible that he plays the whole season, but he's projected to start the season on the PUP. So he's down 4 games automatically. It's going to be hard for him. So I guess Pearsall is the best of the situation. You've talked me into him. Like I have no problem putting him on my roster.
No, please draft Jennings. If we're drafting together, I want you to draft Juwan Jennings, please.
No.
He's safer.
Train.
You like safe. Juwan Jennings is safer.
I've already got my safe with Khalil Shakir. I can start taking risks now.
Hot take that on the surface seems a little far out there, but as I go through this, I don't know that it will stay that far out there or that spicy. But hot take is that Ricky Pearsall leads the Niners in receptions and targets at the end of the season, right? I do think that this is a guy that becomes the Niners wide receiver 1 when the season's all said and done, and where the Niners tend to finish with their wide receiver 1 is a top 20 guy. So this is the guy that I think you can get tremendous value on as a wide receiver 4 and can potentially flirt with wide receiver 1 territory. Like this could be a guy that has tremendous value. And I do think that we could see some things really play out here, right? Like when he started coming back and when we started seeing him catch fire down the stretch. And Ayuk, I think that this is going to be a slower rollout and bringing him back. Juwan Jennings, right? We mentioned earlier in the show that guys that are heading into these kind of contested contract disputes going into camp and really don't have a resolution on that. I'm not really a fan of wanting that on my fantasy roster when it's all said and done, because those seem to carry on into the season, right? And that could just be a not really any hard data to kind of back up that point there. But this is a guy that when it's all said and done, I think will lead the Niners in the in receiving, in receptions, and in targets. And at the end of the season, will be a top 20 wide receiver. So, any other thoughts on Ricky Pearsall?
No, I made my case.
All right, awesome. And that's going to take us down here to the end of it. Any final thoughts out there for the viewers and listeners?
We're getting closer. We're middle of July. We're getting closer. So, thank you for everyone tuning in. We'll get through the top half. We're getting to the top half next week, Derek. Or we're going to get third. The middle third.
Middle third. So 20 through 40, 21 through 40 next week.
Middle third, right? So a lot of wide receiver 2s and 3s here next week, but that's okay. They're valuable assets. We need them. So y'all tune in, see what we got to say about the rest of, or I guess the next tier up, if you will, of wide receiver.
All righty. Alex, any final thoughts out there for the old viewers and listeners?
Nah, appreciate everybody. We'll get there soon. Soon there will be meaningful football.
Right.
Soon.
Right. And I just got I just got Binkin asking what do I think Ricky Pearsall's stat total will be when it's all said and done. I mean, that's not a bad line of 75, 9, 22, and 7. I think that's probably pretty close to what I'm thinking there. I think that we're probably going to see him clear the 1,000 yards on this thing. I like the 7.
Even better.
Yeah, I think when it's all said and done, we're probably going to see 1,050 to 1,100 yards and call it about. I think we're probably going to see closer to about 85 to 90 receptions. I like the 7 touchdown mark.
So, and then give them to me. I'll take them.
So, like I said, it will not surprise me to at the end of the season if we look up and we see him flirting with a wide receiver 15, wide receiver 13 type of thing. Like I think this is a guy that could play into fringe wide receiver 2 territory and fringe wide receiver 1 territory. And with that, you're going to need somewhere around that 80 to 90 receptions, 1,000 to 1,100 yards, and about 7 to 8 touchdowns. So, alrighty. Any other thoughts on that aspect? Okay. Alrighty. So now we got that one out the way. Any final thoughts out there? Alrighty.
Be good. We'll catch everybody next week.
All right, awesome. Appreciate everybody tuning in. That's going to do it for us. We'll be back, like Kevin just said, next week. Looking wide receivers 21 through 40. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Hit us up on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, at Good Old Boys FF, and click that subscribe button. Like and follow, all that good stuff. That's going to do it for us tonight. He's Kevin. He's Alex. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe. Toodaloos.